Good morning, YouTube. My name is Trevor Steele, and in today's video, I want to talk about the two different types of paramotor training philosophy, the pros, the cons, the differences, what the heck they are, and how the heck they work. Let's get into it. There are two main philosophies. Number one is what I like to call the paragliding philosophy. Number two is what I like to call the airplane philosophy. Now, no one school perfectly follows either of these, but they more closely follow one than the other. So what the heck are they? What the heck is the difference, right? The paragliding philosophy really stems with a core focus on the paragliding side. And what that basically means is paragliding philosophy revolves around glider control. That is, how can we perfect control of the glider before we ever go flying? Because in the paragliding world, if you don't have any glider control, there's no way you're going to fly. You're always going to be flying in wind. You need the wind, you need the lift, you need the thermals, you need that kind of conditions in order to fly the glider. And so you have to learn to control that glider on the ground. You have to spend time doing glider control. You have to perfect that control, understand how to prevent collapses, recover from stalls, how much brake pressure, too much, too little, loading control. You have to understand all of that before you can ever fly paragliding. And so the same kind of philosophy carries over to paramotors. It's how can we perfect your glider control skill first before we ever go flying. That's why you spend a bunch of hours on the ground hooked up to a wing, practicing the same thing over and 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 over again until you've really perfected it. And then once you've perfected it, you hook up to a motor, you go flying, and you start to work on that flying aspect. That's very much so the paragliding philosophy. Then you have the paramotor philosophy, which revolves around you have the airplane philosophy, which revolves largely around treating it like an airplane. You teach the pilot how to launch it through forward inflations, through more forward inflations, through more forward inflations. You teach them how to fly it around in the sky, you teach them how to land it. That kind of philosophy, you spend a day or two really focused on the forward inflations. As soon as you've dialed in the forward inflations, you then hook up to a motor and you go and fly. There's not a lot of focus on the glider control. There's not a lot of focus on the reflexes or the muscle memory with that style of instruction. So what are the pros and the cons to both of these, and which one do we follow at Backcountry PPG's basic training? Well, the pros to the airplane technique is that it's really quick. Like if you only focus on launching and landing the paramotor and teaching the person how to do the forward inflations, you could have them flying by day 2, you could have them out the door by day 5, and have an equipment sale by day 6. So you could do that one really, really fast. Plus, in order to do that, you don't really need specific wind conditions. You don't really need the specific environment to where you can practice. You don't really have to worry about that stuff. You really just focus on teaching the pilot how to do forward inflations, how to fly the aircraft, how to land the aircraft. And that's kind of it. There isn't a focus on glider control. There isn't a push on glider control. You just teach them those things. Then in the paragliding sense, it takes a whole lot longer. You're not going to fly until day 6, 7, 8. And then once you do get flying, you're going to get a bunch more flights, and you're going to spend those remaining 4 or 5 days on the flying. But you do have to spend 4, 5, 6 days on the ground, running around, practicing controlling it, flipping it upside down, getting frustrated, going through the highs, going through the lows. But in the end of that paragliding philosophy technique, you really end with a lot of glider control. You really end with a really good understanding of how to fly that glider. So what do we do at Backcountry PPG, and which one do I prefer? Well, I prefer the paragliding philosophy. I come from a world where it's so focused on that glider control. That's my background, is how much glider control can we get you before you go flying? Can you reach this standard minimum of glider control before you go flying? And that really carried over to Backcountry PPG's basic training. It is so heavily focused on that glider control, but not so much focused that you don't ever learn how to fly the aircraft. It still needs to be treated like an airplane. It still needs to be treated like traditional aviation, where you know how to actually fly the glider through the sky, you know how to land it, you know how to do all of those things without forgetting all of that glider control. So it's kind of a combination of the two. It's really focused on teaching you that glider control, because to me, that's the most important part. Any and every pilot out there can be a better pilot if they have more glider control skill. Like if you spent 50 hours on the ground practicing glider control, you're going to be a better pilot by hour 51. Like you're going to be better both on the ground with your launches, landings, and taxiing, and in the air with your maneuvers, energy management, timing, understanding of the wing. All of that stuff is improved through more glider control. So when you come through Backcountry PPG's basic training, there's a large focus on that glider control. And the thing with glider control is it's really hard to teach. Like teaching someone to do forward inflations and flying and ground school and all of that stuff, that's pretty simple. But teaching someone to really understand glider control means that you have to understand it and you have to know how to teach it. Because you can know how to do it, but not know how to teach it. And so it's a really difficult thing to learn how to manipulate someone's body, shift someone's body, and say things in a way that they can understand while also showing them how to go and build that glider control skill. So at Backcountry PPG, we're gonna spend a freaking ton of time on the ground teaching you and perfecting that glider control skill. I wanna be able to hand you a wing and you're more than comfortable to kite that wing in most any weather conditions, any environment, any situation, and not really lose control. Like the goal is that you can never lose control with the glider. If I can hand you a wing and you could kite that sucker long enough that you never lose control, you're ready to go. But at the end of the day, it's also not about spending 30 days of time trying to get you glider control and then fly you on day 31. That at the end of the day just doesn't work. The goal is also to push you down that line and continue to progress and build that skill and build that technique and those muscle memory and that reflexes so that when it does come flying time that you're ready to hook up to a motor and go and fly. See, at Backcountry PPG, what we're really focusing on is trying to introduce you to all of the things that are gonna happen before they happen. And by that, I mean, I want you to know what that motor feels like before you ever have to put it on. I want you to know what that power feels like before you're hammering down for your first flight. I want you to know how to do all of those little things and having done them a bunch of times through repetition. The biggest thing that we're really focusing on is the repetition at the school. It's more and more and more and more. And that's why we're really following down that paragliding philosophy. And that's what we're really focusing on is how can we get you and that wing to connect and kind of be one and dance together, fly together, be one together before we hook you up to a motor and go flying, and not so much just focus on forward inflations, get you flying. It's day 5, you're already ready to go. It's let's master this thing. Let's really build this technique, but also let's get you flying. Let's not go so far that you never fly, but let's really work on building those muscle memories, those reflexes, that core skill set that is gonna carry over. Anyways, that is enough for my rant today. If you guys are interested in learning more or have questions about what I just said, feel free to text me, call me 801-599-1684. Check out my website, backcountryppg.com. The link is down in the description below. If you want to come through our basic training program, there's information down below. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.